that's Goldshire Null. This card, as it's a 10 mana minion, and there's no 11 mana minion within Standard itself, will evolve into a 10 drop, and a lot of people have asked for it to go to 11. My prediction is this card doesn't get nerfed. Shaman's only real playable deck right now in Standard is basically this, and I don't think they want to Warrior Shaman, so I think it will stay at 10.
Let's get salty!
Everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and as some may have predicted, we have another dead class in Hearthstone. Joining Warrior, Garrosh doesn't have to feel so bad. We'll go into it, we'll take a look at what exactly happening and what kind of the bigger problem that I'm seeing in Hearthstone in general. Why I do think it's a big problem going forward, and we're seeing it more and more. If you enjoyed the content on the channel, by the way, you feel like I've earned your subscription, please hit that sub button down below. Give the video a like, helps the channel out a ton, especially as we're on the road to 69,420 subs. So taking a look at H's replay across all ranks, this has been what, we were almost, well, we're less than a week removed, right? From the latest balance patch that saw basically this card, Goldshire Null, go from 10 to 11, which was Evolve Shaman's big payoff, and Shaman was near the top, if not the top class in all of Standard, and with 1 mana, 1 card changed, it is now dead last. They made it. They actually made it so that Warrior isn't the worst class anymore. Warrior's win rate hasn't improved by any means, but Shaman has plummeted so much that it is dead last. And similar in Wild, where we saw the change to Cataclysm, Warlock was doing pretty well. It is now the last class in Wild. As people, I guess, are still trying to make that work. There's stuff to play in Warlock and Wild. I don't want to make that comparison as much, but it is kind of funny to see how like 1 nerf can change things so much. But this is across all ranks, so maybe things are looking a little bit better. I don't know. High Legend. Well, if you look for the best Shaman deck in top 1000 Legend, we don't have one. We do not have one whatsoever, nor do we even have a Warrior deck. Well, let's try Legend. Maybe at Legend we can find a Warrior or Shaman. Yep, there's absolutely nothing here. How about Diamond through Legend? Certainly, you know, more people are going to play stuff like this lower ranks. Can we find a Warrior or Shaman? Ah, there we go. Evolve Shaman. No Warrior deck, but Evolve Shaman, 41%. And that's with the transmutation bug going on right now, where you can still evolve the Null into a 10 drop. I think that's still active, but it doesn't work with like Muck Pools or Evolving Wave or anything like that. It's just not quite the same. So yes, 1 nerf has completely obliterated a class, and we just had a time where if you take a look at a class like Rogue, which is technically last on here across all ranks, but if you take a look at Legend, top 1000 Legend, you have Death Rattle Rogue doing really well. At Legend, it's the top class Diamond, or top deck, Diamond through Legend, it's up there. But we've seen Rogue nerf like how many times the last few patches? Maybe like 6 times or something, and the class is still viable. Yet Shaman has 1 neutral card nerfed, it kills the class. Does 1 class get obliterated? Well, this was the only competitive deck Shaman had, and it was reliant solely on the high roll of Goldshire Null. Basically get it out early, because you could get it out as early as turn 2, evolving it, and you get a 10 drop. And well, now it just evolves into itself. 1 class single-handedly was held up by a high roll. So does that mean it shouldn't have been nerfed? No, if you even watch my video where I talked about it, I said I wouldn't be upset if it got nerfed because it's an unhealthy play pattern, but I thought it could lead to a Warrior situation where Shaman is basically unplayable. Ironically, if you take a look at the Warrior situation, last time Warrior was good was it had the evolve, like the whole scam from the depths on 3. You played it on 3, you basically won the game. Surprisingly, just 1 mana slowed that down enough that it's not that big a scam. And yeah, Warrior's been basically dead ever since. These classes were held up by a scam. And I do think that, yeah, that's more of a thing where they're failing the class, at least from a design perspective, you want to go that way, on not giving the class valid ways of winning without a pure scam. Because you take a look at some of the top decks out there right now. Let's say Pure Paladin. It does have scams, like, don't get me wrong, with like the Countess, especially now with like Purator into Light Ray and cheating 1 billion mana. But overall, it's a little bit more reasonable. Undead Priest doesn't really have scams. It's just really consistent and murders people. Even like Questra doesn't really have a big scam. It does have an OTK that's frustrating in Bran Astalor, but you get what I mean, right? These classes have a bit more consistency. They have a bit more, you know, win conditions. They have things to do. But for me, the bigger problem, and this has been an underlying problem we have talked about at times throughout the year, is basically every expansion. Let's just use March of the Lich King as an example. Every expansion, a class basically gets forced archetypes, right? Like 2 forced archetypes every set, and the cards are effectively almost useless across these archetypes. Like, we got taunt stuff lately, right? Taunt stuff, and none of it's done anything for warrior, so these taunt cards are effectively dead. I think a really good example to take a look at is look at Sunken City. Look at Warlock. Remember they forced a Murloc Warlock? They had all these Murloc cards, which had like 0 support before the expansion came out. There's a couple of wild cards you can look at, but that's irrelevant for standard. They gave Murlocs and they gave curses, and that's it, right? And Murloc, you know how much Murloc support we've seen since that set? Nothing. So you have like a bunch of cards that are completely useless, and if the archetype doesn't work, that's a bunch of cards that class doesn't have to utilize. And let's say a Murloc Warlock doesn't work out. Let's say Curse Warlock doesn't work out like it did at first. Then those cards are relevant. If something becomes good for the class later, but becomes problematic that it needs to get nerfed, they have nothing to fall back on because they have all these really niche archetypes. We've seen it with so many different classes. We'll use Shaman as an example. As they're struggling this, remember Castle Nathria, they got a bunch of totem stuff, totemic evidence, the chisel, the stone right, Geigen totem, and what do we get after that for more Murloc or totem support since it didn't work out? Nothing. So it's just a dead cards that can't fall back on. Same with like the big shaman stuff they got in the most recent expansion. Doesn't work? Well, they got nothing to fall back on. They have all these forced archetypes. We've seen across so many different classes and so many dead cards in the game because they're built around, you know, actually working and using cards that have to be extremely synergistic. And when you're offered no other opportunities down the road, it becomes a problem. Whereas look at Pure Paladin. The beautiful thing about a Pure Paladin archetype, sure, you have the Curator Cure payoff, they gave the Countess payoff, but the whole archetype of Pure Paladin is playing Paladin cards. They're always going to get more Paladin cards, so it's going to get some support no matter what. I mean, another example is Relic Demon Hunter. There's only so much Relic stuff. They're never going to make more relics or relic support, so that package has to be good enough to kind of bump Demon Hunter up, or they have to get a whole new archetype or something like that. Like, what if they decide, you know, Relic of Dimensions is still really unhealthy, we're going to kill that card. What does Demon Hunter go back to? They have all these other forced archetypes like Big Demon Hunter, which again, you have to run very specific cards to utilize. If that doesn't work out, which it hasn't, then it's just another dead archetype. And we've been seeing that a lot these past few years. Instead of giving generalized cards, just generally good cards that classes can use, a removal card, a weapon, a good minion, they're given these niche specialized cards all the time, and it leads to not only basically decks having to build themselves, but if these decks fail, they become useless cards, and it can create frustration. You open all these cards, you can't really do a ton with them. You open Grand Magus Antonidas and Battlecry, you cast a fire spell in each of your last 3 turns, but like, what fire spell synergy stuff that they really pulled off ever since this card came in United Stormwind, right? Like, it saw play for a minute and it's just forgotten about. Now, to me, I just find it weird that they create these very, very niche deck designs all the time, like constantly, rather than more generalized cards to let players build their decks. And now we're seeing a lot of this where, yeah, if an archetype gets killed, like an Evolved Shaman, like a From the Depths Warrior, it just kills the class and there's no way to really get it back, because you can buff a good card, you can buff plenty of good cards, but if there's not enough support for that niche card, it's not going to do anything. And well, take a look at Rogue, the class that got nerfed the most this year, I would argue, and it still does well. Even like the whole concoction thing is just, you know, it's just a nice little support thing. It does general Hearthstone stuff. It doesn't require a huge build around. None of the Rogue stuff really does, and as a result, when something gets nerfed, you can move things around, you can combine stuff. It's a more example of like how to put things together rather than just alienating this card styles to be like, you have to play this or it won't work, and if it doesn't work, you're screwed. And I feel like this is starting to pile up a little bit, and I'd rather see them go back more to the older style, just make a good card, let the deck builder figure out what to do with it. Of just, you know, give a bunch of broken imp cards and, well, yeah, this package is worked out because they're all busted, but you're just gonna click the imp button, you know, search imp and just kind of autocomplete. Like, how many of the cards in the standard imp warlock deck do you exclude when you just search imp? You have flame imp, you have wicked shipment, you have fluster librarian, you don't put in bloodhound imp. Sometimes you put this card in, you definitely put that one in. Imposter, you don't. Nothing's impossible, you do. I forgot that's a card. There's a few you exclude, right? But you put in library, you put in circle, you put imp game boss, you put mischievous imp, you exclude Niru, you put Rafam. There's like 5 cards you exclude by just searching imp, and you have yourself a tier 1 deck, as long as it's powerful enough. And there's so little flexibility that, well, if the imps aren't any good, my imp cards aren't going to work. And it's just the whole thing. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think about, because that's how I really feel like Warrior and Shaman have kind of fallen down this path. They're niche little archetypes. They're not working, and there's nothing a deck builder or anybody could do to really fix that up, right? I don't care how good Frostfin Chomper is when it requires me to only run elementals or murlocs or whatever. Again, I've got to have a lot of that, and there rarely is ever enough to make these things work. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and stay salty, my friends.